Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, March 11th, and welcome back to the Nick Watkins Show. I'm Nick Watkins. Let's get into it. We don't have the most time today, so we're going to try and talk about everything super clear and concise like we did last week. But is a ton to talk about today, so we got to talk about it, but we got to be quick about it. So, our top story, there are a couple news stories that are competing for our top story, but we're going to start with history made in the NBA last night. Bam Adebayo dropped 83 points last night for the Heat on the Wizards. He was 20 for 43 on field goals, 7 for 22 on threes. He was just chucking them up. 36 for 43 on free throws. That is a ton of free throws, but he played 42 minutes and scored 83 points, the second most all time, behind Wilt Chamberlain's famous 100-point game, passing Kobe Bryant's legacy game of 81. 83 points for the captain of the Miami Heat. What a phenomenal game this was. A historic game. Literally a historic game. He was unbelievable. This is the type of performance that you only see every once in a while. I mean, the last time we saw somebody drop 80 plus was Kobe Bryant 10 years ago, and we just saw Bam Adebayo do it last night. It's just a special performance. That's what it is, and it's insanely impressive. 80 points. It is ridiculous. You do gotta mention the free throws though. 36 made free throws out of 43. And I'm not considering it as a knock. I'm considering it as he was just so good that they just kept fouling him. And he got a lot of and one opportunities. He was scoring. He had 20 field goals and he had 7 threes. He was just chucking up 3 pointers, but he was it was efficient. He was 46% from the field, and it just a historic game for Bam Adebayo. It really is. Um, you can't really say more about that because that's the truth. It was historic. We'll leave it there. If you want to look it up more, I suggest you watch the highlights because it's very entertaining. But just history made last night. Let's move on though because we have a lot to talk about still. I don't want to belabor the point. Let's go to football. Some big moves involving the Baltimore Ravens and a couple of the other one is a non-move. So let's go into football here. Yesterday, the Raiders announced that the Ravens were backing out of the trade that would have sent Max Crosby to Baltimore in exchange for 2 first-round picks. This is a huge deal. And the reason that the Ravens backed out was because of a failed physical. If a player gets traded, he has to pass his physical in order for the trade to go through. Crosby failed his physical. Concerns with his surgically repaired knee that sent him back to Las Vegas because the trade did not go through. Now, this sent shockwaves through the entire NFL. This is a huge deal. We're going to start from the Ravens' perspective because it really hurts them. They made the trade for Crosby, who has a max contract, 3 years, like 109. And they felt like, and not felt like, they didn't have enough money and enough cap space to pay the free agents that were leaving, like Tyler Linderbaum, who went to the Raiders. How funny is that? So, because they thought they had Crosby, they didn't go out and spend on free agents. They didn't try and re sign their free agents because they didn't think they had the money to do so. Now it turns out they did have the money because the Crosby trade didn't go through, but it's too late for that because the free agents are already signed. So the Ravens were really put into a tough place because you either do nothing and you essentially just lost all your top free agents, or you can go out and try and do something major in order to replace Crosby. I don't want to say, but they either were going to have to do nothing or do something huge in response to it to try and get back on the right track. And the Ravens did something huge. They went out and they signed Trey Hendrickson. In my opinion, he's the top free agent on the market. He is a defensive end from the Cincinnati Bengals last year. He was signed by he was drafted by the Saints, and then he went to Cincinnati where he turned into a monster. The deal is worth 4 years, $112 million, can be worth up to $120 million. And I think this is a good deal for both sides. The Ravens needed somebody, anybody, after the Crosby deal didn't go through, and they went out and got the best free agent on the market, who also happened to be a defensive end, the same position that Crosby plays. So you can kind of see like the Ravens they did a great job minimizing the damage that could have happened by going out and getting another defensive end. They did lose their free agents that went, but in return they got Trey Hendrickson. So they're not super. If I were a Ravens fan, I wouldn't be super upset with the situation. It is obviously not ideal, but at least you have something. You could have nothing, and that's why I think this is a big, big signing for the Ravens because they were put in a tough position and they decided to go out and do something about it. Got the best free agent, got a defensive end to help that pass rush. And I think this is a good move for Baltimore. I really do. And Hendrickson, I think the interesting part about it, and what I think is especially good for the Ravens, is 4 years, 112. That's not $30 million. It can be worth up to $30 million. But, you know, if you look at what defensive ends are going for nowadays, you look at Parsons getting 47 million. The other numbers are Garrett and Bosa and Watt upwards of 30 million. And you look at what the Panthers gave out to Jalen Phillips, which was still the biggest signing of free agency money wise. They gave him 4 years, 120. And Trey Hendrickson is better than Jalen Phillips. He's on the field more, and when he's on the field, he's better than Jalen Phillips. And they got him for cheaper. And that's why I think this is such a good deal for the Bengals, or not for the Bengals, for the Ravens. I think that's why this is such a good deal for the Ravens because they could have had to pay more for Hendrickson, and Crosby is making more AAV. And instead, they get Trey Hendrickson, who has potential to continue to grow when Crosby has that knee issue. But Hendrickson, they got him for cheaper than Crosby or somebody else, and they got him in his prime pretty much. I mean, he's been so good recently. He's just a relentless pass rusher. So I think this is big for the Ravens. I also think it's interesting because last year Trey Hendrickson was kind of demanding a trade. And at the start of the offseason, the Bengals did not give him one. They gave him a contract extension so he could keep playing. They gave him 1 year, $31 million, and this is less than that AAV. So I think what this means for Hendrickson is he just wanted to get out of Cincinnati. He didn't necessarily, well, obviously he cares about the money, but he was willing to take less somewhere else so he could get out of Cincinnati. And he did take less. He took just a tiny bit less, but he goes to the Ravens, also in the AFC North. But the Ravens are trying to get back to that dominant defense that made them so good. And the Hendrickson is going to be a big part of that. So let's look at it from the Raiders' perspective now. For the Raiders, they're put in this spot where they can either. Well, let's think about this because this is an interesting point. From the Raiders' perspective of the trade not going through, they're put in an interesting spot because they traded Max Crosby, thought they had the 2 picks, but that doesn't go through. So now they still have Max Crosby, and they went out and they spent a ton of money on free agents. You remember they signed Linderbaum from the Ravens. They signed the 2 linebackers, Dean and Walker. They signed Naylor, the wide receiver from the Vikings. So they went out, they spent a ton of money, and now they still have Max Crosby. So the question is, are they going to try and trade him again to a different trade partner? Or are they just going to keep him because the roster now is with Crosby looks a whole lot better than it did 2-3 days ago? So if I were them, I am honestly not sure. I think it really depends on if they think they can compete this year or not. Because if they think they can compete this year, they'll keep Crosby because he is so valuable. But if they're still in that rebuild mode, and to be fair, just 4 signings, it can do a lot. But I don't know if it's going to take them from 2 wins to the playoffs. So maybe if they don't think that they're going to compete, they'll try and trade Crosby. The interesting wrinkle in that is, will they be able to trade Crosby? Because the trade didn't go through because of his failed physical. Would another team be willing to risk that and accept the trade, even though the knee is showing problems? The team would have to be kind of desperate for that to happen. Additionally, the return for the Raiders would not be as large as what they got from the Ravens because of this issue come to light. So it's an interesting predicament. We'll have to see what happens in the next couple of days because a lot of teams were interested in Crosby before he got traded to the Ravens. And now that the trade didn't go through, I still think those teams will be interested, but the interest may have waned a little bit or the return wouldn't be as good for the Raiders. And they just end up keeping him. So it's a very interesting situation that happened and we'll have to see what the Raiders do about it because the Ravens, they already made their move, but the Raiders still have yet to make their response move. We'll see what they do. I'm very interested to see what they do. All right. So that was that. That's the two big stories, but we have some more big stories. Um, the one free agent signing I do want to talk about, Daniel Jones. He re-signed with the Indianapolis Colts. I don't even know if he was a free agent. I think they tagged him and then they just signed him. So that's cool. He gets 2 years, $88 million. I think this is a very good number for both sides because you remember Daniel Jones had that big contract with the Giants and he did not live up to expectations there, so they shipped him off and then he winds up in Indianapolis. Plays fantastic at the start of last year. He was looking like a real MVP candidate for the Colts before he got hurt and they went into a complete spiral when he went down, missed the playoffs, but he's going to come back 2 years, $88 million. Compared to what other quarterbacks are getting around the league, this is a good number for him. And there is a little bit of concern with the injuries because he tore his ACL with the Vikings. It was an Achilles last year that took him out for the year. But if you look at what Daniel Jones was doing for the Colts and why they were doing so great, it's because of his play, but it wasn't because of his mobility. When he was on the Giants, he was running around like crazy. He was throwing his body around for the team. But with the Colts, he was more in the pocket. He was still mobile. He's very elusive, underrated athleticism, but it wasn't like he was playing like Lamar or somebody like that. He was throwing it, and his arm was the reason why they were doing so well. Um, in for him. And I think those injuries are definitely going to play a part, but I don't think it's going to be as big. I think he's going to play like he did last year. I don't know if it's going to be the same. I highly doubt that because he was so good. But there's a chance he can return to that form. It's not unrealistic, but I think this could be a great signing for the Colts. They could get him at a great value. And even if he doesn't perform as well as he did, it's still a good number considering other quarterback paydays. So I like this signing for Indianapolis. Let's talk now about the other sports going on. We're going to go to MLB. Not MLB, but baseball. We're going to go to the World Baseball Classic because there was a major, major upset yesterday. Team Italy beat Team USA, an upset 8-6 victory for the Italians. I was shocked when I saw this. Team Italy was up 8-0 at one point in this game because of three homers. Who hit the homers? Teal hit the first homer, then Caglione hit the second homer. Or no, wait. Teal hit a homer, Antonacci hit a two-run homer, and Caglione hit a two-run homer. And then a couple of errors in the sixth inning. Wild pitches, throwing errors, sac flies, so small ball mistakes from Team USA made it 8-0, and they only had 12 outs to score 8 runs to tie the game, and they got very close. Gunnar Hendrickson hit a solo homer. Then I went to the bottom of the seventh, and the USA got a 2-run rally, 2 singles, and a bomb from Pete Crow Armstrong. Roman Anthony in the 8th inning. The USA had a rally going in the 8th inning, and Roman Anthony was able to knock in Kyle Schwarber, another 2-out rally going on. Bryce Harper got brought up to the plate, and he flew out. He was the tying run, and he flew out. Then you go to the 9th inning, PCA hit another home run, and then Bobby Witt had a single, got to second, or he did not get to second, but he got a single. Gunnar Henderson struck out, and then the captain, Aaron Judge, came to the plate in the form of the tying run, and he struck out. And the comeback failed for the United States. They just ran out of outs was the issue, and they lost this game 8-6 to Italy. Nolan McLean was the starter for the United States. He got the loss. He went 3 innings pitched, gave up 2 hits, which were both homers, and 2 walks, 3 earned runs, 4 strikeouts. The winning pitcher, Michael Lorenzen, 4 2/3, 2 hits and a walk, struck out 2, no runs allowed, 4 2/3. Great start for Michael Lorenzen. And the bullpen for Italy, a lot of MLB guys, I thought their stuff was filthy just looking at it. They did give up a lot of runs in the later part of the game. They gave up 6 runs in the final 3 innings, but they had a big enough lead where those runs did not come back to bite them. And Italy with a big upset. So what does this mean for the pool? What does this mean for Pool B? It's pretty crazy. And you might want to get your calculator out because this is a very, very weird scenario as to the possible outcomes for who advances from Pool B. So take a look at this. Today, Mexico will play Italy. This game will determine which of the 3 teams, Mexico, US, and Italy, will advance to the playoff round of the WBC. Here's the scenarios. 1, Italy wins. They're in as the 1 seed, and the U.S. is the 2 seed. If Mexico wins and they score 4 or less runs, they advance as the 2 seed, and Italy is the 1 seed. So, and then look at this one. Mexico wins and scores 5+ runs, they advance, and the USA advances. So it's so confusing. There are 3 possible outcomes. All 3 of these teams can still make it or be eliminated. The simplest one, if Italy wins, they're in, and so is the USA. If Mexico wins, if Mexico wins and they score 4 or less, then they advance and Italy advances. So basically, this is how it goes. If Italy wins, they're in. If Mexico wins, they're in. But it will depend on how many runs Mexico scores. Because if they score 5 or more, then the U.S. advances with them. If they score 4 or less, then Italy advances. So how can the United States make it? The only way, there are 2 ways for the U.S. to advance to the next round. Italy wins, they're in. That's the simplest one. If Mexico wins and they score 5 or more, then the USA will advance. If Mexico wins and they score 4 or less, the U.S. do not advance. This is a crazy situation, and if you need more explanation, just rewind it. You can also take a look at some explanations online because it's a nuts situation. But this is an incredibly important game going on tonight between the Italians and the Mexicans to determine who will advance and who won't. It's unbelievable. It's high stakes WBC game, and we'll have to break it down tomorrow after the result because it's going to be nuts. It's pretty crazy. Other games: Israel beat the Netherlands, Canada beat Puerto Rico, and Japan beat Czechia. We already mentioned that one. Today, going on to DR and Venezuela. That's for the 1 seed in their pool, Pool C or Pool D? It's Pool D. Italy and Mexico, like I talked about, and then Pool A, Canada and Cuba as well. From yesterday's spring training, the Giants beat the Guardians 5-4. Carson Seymour got the win. He looked nice. And yep, Hayden Birdsong finally had a good outing in spring training. He went 1 inning pitch and struck out 1, and the Giants won the game. Today, the Giants play the Royals, but we're mostly focused on the WBC. That's what's going on. That's what's crazy. All right, basketball stuff. The Warriors lost last night to the Bulls in overtime. I don't want to talk about it. 130 to 124. I don't even know who this is. Buzelis, he dropped 41 points, so that's, cool. That's great. We're moving on. Yesterday, the Sharks lost to the Sabres 6-3, and there's nothing really much to talk about in this game except for the Sabres are a very good team, and the Sharks did not have enough to beat them yesterday. It's not anything crazy. There was a very physical game, a couple of fights, but nothing really noteworthy. That's kind of what we expected, to be honest with you. But around the league, some big scores. The Oilers beat the Avalanche 4-3. The Predators beat the Kraken 4-2, which is big for us because we don't lose ground on the Kraken. The Ducks beat the Jets. The Stars beat the Golden Knights, which is good for us. The Wild beat the Mammoth, also good for us in terms of the wild card. The Bruins beat the Kings in overtime, so the Kings still get a point from that. And then the Islanders beat the Blues. So taking a look at the West real quick, so we're going to have to wrap this up soon. The West just got shaken up in a crazy way. Now the Ducks are in first place of the Pacific Conference. The Oilers, and they are the 4th seed, the Oilers are now 6. The Golden Knights are now 7. They both have 72. The Kraken stay at 8 with 67 points. The Kings move up into a tie with them for 67. The Sharks have 66, and so do the Preds. The Mammoth now have 73, 1 point up on the Oilers, and the top 3 are still way out ahead. So the Western Conference is bananas right now. And we had a whole bunch of teams going. Pretty much every single team still in contention for a wild card spot in the Western Conference played yesterday, and we had a drastic shakeup in the standings. And that's going to do it for today's episode because I got to go. I got work. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.